Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Connecticut's National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure, or NEVI program, public information meeting on the recently released Phase 1 request for proposals. We are recording this webinar, so if you aren't able to tune in for the whole event, or if you would like to review this presentation again, you will be able to find a link to the recording from this event on both our NEVI website and on the RFP posting page on CT Source. Just a couple of housekeeping items. If you have any questions during the webinar, we ask that you put them in the Zoom question and answer box. And if you find that you didn't have time to ask your question, or if you think of a question later, you can submit those to our NEVI email inbox, which is listed on the screen. We will be posting written responses to all the questions we receive on the CT NEVI webpage. If you're new to Zoom or trying to access the captions and subtitles, there are instructions on the screen right now. To turn on this feature, select the CC button at the bottom right corner of your screen, and this will turn on the captioning. If you need captions in another language, you can click on the Speaking Language button and select the language that you need from the drop-down menu. These are some directions on where to find the Zoom question and answer box. Like I mentioned earlier, we would appreciate that any questions you have during the presentation go into the Q&A field, and we will do our best to answer those questions at the end of our presentation. If there's anyone joining us just by phone today, you can press dial *9 during the question and answer section to raise and lower your hand if you need to answer questions or ask questions that way. Here is Connecticut DOT's Title VI Notice to the Public. The Connecticut Department of Transportation operates its programs and services without regard to race, color, and national origin in accordance with Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. Any person who believes he or she has been aggrieved by any unlawful discriminatory practice under Title VI may file a complaint with the Connecticut Department of Transportation. There are directions on this slide on how to do so. I'll just leave that up for a couple seconds. Okay, this is the same slide as the previous slide, but in Spanish. So if you need help filing a complaint or want to learn more about Title VI, these are the Spanish instructions on how to do that. Okay, this is the agenda that we will be going over today. We're specifically talking about the request for proposals that is currently open. After we go through some welcome and introductions, I'll give a brief overview on the Connecticut NEVI program, review the LOI process that was recently open, give an overview of the RFP and the application procedure. Then we'll briefly go through the evaluation and selection process and discuss the timeline and next steps for grant award. So my name is Rebecca Andrucci. I am a Transportation Planner 2 at the Connecticut Department of Transportation in the Sustainability and Resiliency Unit. This program is being administered by myself and Emily Pish at DOT, and we're also working with assistance from our consulting firms, Fuss & O'Neill and CDM Smith. In a little bit, you'll also be hearing from Jacqueline Murdoch. She's the Planning and Discipline Leader at CDM Smith, and she will provide the overview of our evaluation and selection process for the proposals that we receive. So a brief overview of NEVI. The IIJA formula funding gives approximately $52 million to Connecticut over a 5-year timeframe, and Connecticut DOT will be responsible for administrating that formula funding. Federal regulations require states to fully build out their FHWA designated alternative fuel corridors before funding EV charging in other locations of the state. With that being a federal requirement, the first phase of Connecticut's NEVI funding supports expanding EV charging stations on private sites along our alternative fuel corridors, which consists of about 350 miles of the state's interstate system along I-84, I-91, I-95, and Route 7. Before any of the federal formula funds can be allocated to the state to build out EV infrastructure, the NEVI program requires each state to submit a deployment plan to the Federal Highway Administration by August 1 of each year. Connecticut's first NEVI plan encompassed fiscal year 22 and 23. FHWA approved that plan in September of 2022. Connecticut DOT submitted our fiscal year 24 plan to FHWA in August of this year. That fiscal year 24 plan serves as an addendum to our previously adopted fiscal year 2022 to 2023 plan and incorporates actions that have occurred since 2022, as well as outlining our strategy to build out the AFCs in this phase 1 grant solicitation. You can find a copy of this plan on our NEVI plan website with a link included here. For phase 1 of the program, Connecticut DOT anticipates roughly $15 million will be made available to complete the build out of the DC fast charging network along Connecticut's alternative fuel corridors. As a precursor to the RFP, we issued a letter of intent application process that was open from September 28th to November 9th. As we've stated previously, we will only be accepting RFP responses from proposers who submitted a response to the LOI. If you did not submit a response to the LOI, you are not eligible to submit for this phase 1 of funding. However, that does not preclude you from submitting for future phases. Another thing to note is that we will be cross-referencing RFP submissions with the LOIs that we received to ensure consistency. We will not be accepting the submission of new locations in this RFP that were not submitted in the LOI. So this slide shows a breakdown of how the RFP is organized. Most of this information is straight from the LOI that was released. Section 1 is the program description, which describes NEVI's purpose, lists our priority zones, and reviews the anticipated timeline for project selection. Section 2 contains the eligibility information, which defines who the eligible applicants are and what projects are eligible for funding under the federal NEVI requirements. This section also outlines which specific costs are deemed eligible for reimbursement under the program. Section 3 provides an overview of the mandatory technical requirements for projects funded through this program, including operation and maintenance, interoperability, data reporting, customer information and accessibility, and compliance with federal regulations. All RFPs that are posted by the state of Connecticut are required to be listed on CTSource, which is the state's procurement portal. This slide shows what the RFP page looks like on the portal and shows the list of attached documents that are part of the RFP package. The direct link that is shown here is also available on the department's NEVI homepage. Okay, on this slide, we have a couple of resources available to applicants who are interested in responding. CTSource does require that you create an account to use their submission portal. So there's a PDF available with instructions on how to create an account, and another PDF that shows instructions on how to respond to a bid. We will be sending all of these links in the chat box for this webinar so that they will be available to you. All these links are also available within the RFP itself. So there are 4 documents that are posted on the RFP page on CTSource. Besides the actual RFP document itself, there are 3 documents that make up Appendices A and B. Appendix A is the application form and consists of all the materials that we are asking applicants to fill out and submit back to us. Within the application form, you'll be asked to provide your administrative information and your responses to the initial, core, and bonus criteria. Also required in the application form are the following attachments: a schematics and plan set, project schedule, a utility coordination form, and project cost form. Lastly, the application form includes other federal and state required forms that are listed on this slide. The RFP document package also includes Appendix B, which is a sample grant agreement. We aren't asking applicants to do anything with this document. However, it is provided for you to review the terms and conditions you would be expected to adhere to should you be selected for grant award. I'm now going to turn it over to Jackie Murdoch at CDM Smith to review the evaluation and selection process.
Great, thank you, thank you. All right, we'll get into it. So here we're just going to give you an overview of how the department will use a consistent 3-step approach to reviewing RFP responses. This approach first includes an initial screening to identify any proposals that fail to meet minimum requirements as defined in the RFP. These minimum requirements are primarily yes/no attestations that the proposer will comply with federal NEVI rulemaking provisions and to make sure that the application is complete. Proposals that pass that initial criteria stage will be evaluated against a set of core criteria, which you can see the general categories there at the bottom of the slide, which analyze the qualifications of the proposer team, the technical merits of the proposed project, and the proposed finances of the project. You can see on the slide here the breakdown of points across these 3 categories. Qualifications focus on subcategories such as experience and financial capabilities. The technical criteria focuses on subcategories such as siting, site readiness, the O&M approach, and equity, workforce, and economic development. And finally, that financial criteria subcategories focuses on project cost, financial viability, and match. Next slide. You can move on to the bonus criteria for me. Thank you. Okay, so the bonus criteria may be applied. This is sort of the 3rd optional stage when there are multiple proposals in the same phase 1 priority zone that score within 5 points of each other on the core criteria. So the bonus criteria acknowledge proposals that promote Connecticut DOT's broader program objectives, such as future-proofing EVSE equipment to meet future needs and efforts to improve the customer experience by providing additional amenities that exceed federal requirements. The bonus criteria also recognize efforts to support the development of renewable energy in support of the state's broader sustainability objectives. And the department also reserves the right to consider project cost effectiveness in making tiebreaker decisions in this bonus criteria element. And proposals are requested to submit as much information as available to allow Connecticut DOT to assess the bonus criteria. All right, back to you, I think, for the next step.
Yes, I'm going to turn it over to Emily Pish at the department, who will go over the evaluation and selection process.
Good morning, everyone. So the proposals will be evaluated, scored, and then given an initial or what we're calling provisional ranking against the other proposals that are within the same zone. So proposals in one zone won't be ranked against those for another zone because they're site specific and tied to that specific address. Based on those provisional rankings, we at Connecticut DOT will then advance the top scoring proposals for further consideration or shortlisting, as we're saying. We'll shortlist at least 2 proposals if we have them per zone. Even if there's a large difference between the top and lower ranked proposals, we'll see what we can do there and shortlist those 2. And this does provide us some comfort that if there are flaws in an application or if someone withdraws at that point, that we can still have a project to fall back on. If in our judgment at CTDOT, there are more than two proposals that are highly competitive, we may decide to advance more than two. However, that will be in very limited circumstances. After a 2-week period of information exchange between us and the applicant, and any clarifications that need to be made are received, we may decide to move forward with one of those. We will invite the applicant to make any adjustments to their proposal, and we'll call this that best and final offer, or BAFO, as you'll see in the RFP document. There's no requirement for anyone to submit a best and final offer. That's entirely up to you as the proposer. If after the 5-day period for BAFOs, or best and final offer, the shortlisted proposals will be reevaluated, scored, and then given their final ranking. So the top ranked proposal within each zone will be designated an apparent successful proposer, or an ASP. All right. And at this point, once we have that ASP identified, we will send a conditional award letter to that ASP outlining terms, conditions of the award, as well as that final amount that's agreed upon. The ASP then has the right to accept or reject that award. There's no binding terms at that point. If rejected, we'll move on to the next highest ranked proposal, if there is one, and issue that same conditional award letter to them. If there is not a second ranked proposal, then we will have to resolicit for either that zone or go back to the drawing board and try to identify a different zone. Once the ASP will then have 10 days to accept. Hopefully they do. But if not, we will then go on to the next and consider that to be a rejection. Once the ASP has sent their acceptance back to Connecticut DOT, then it's time to start working on those preconditions of the grant, which include a contract. We'll send that grant agreement, which is very similar but have a little bit further detail filled in than the one that's in Appendix B in your RFP document. And we'll just customize that to each specific site and their conditions. After both parties sign the agreement, and after all preconditions are met, whatever they may be for that specific site, we'll issue that formal notice to proceed. And that does mark the start of all development activities for this project. So this is a really important milestone to hit for us. And then lastly, this is just an illustrated view of that process. Just wanted you to have another option of visualizing this. As after we get through those scorings, we'll then start ranking into that apparent successful proposer, and move on through that conditional award process, which does take time as we're dealing with federal funds and working with our federal partners on those final approvals.
Okay, so here is just an overview of the timeline that we've talked about. After the question and answer period ends on February 23rd, we will post responses to all the written questions by February 29th. The RFP will close on March 13th, and then this summer is when we will be finalizing our review of proposals, shortlisting, issuing conditional award letters, with the anticipation that the final award process will be summer 2024 and final grant agreements executed in the fall of this year. Okay, if you have any questions now, you can go ahead and submit them through the Q&A box in Zoom. Any questions that we answer orally now will be documented and shared in the written responses that we'll post on our website and on CT Source. Any questions that are submitted here but we don't get a chance to answer will also be included in the written response. Questions can also be submitted to our NEVI email address shown on the slide. Our intent is to update the Q&A document on roughly a weekly basis so that questions do not remain unanswered for a long period of time. Okay, do we have any questions? Team to review?
Rebecca, we had one question come in regarding costs that were incurred prior to an award. And the response to that is that, and this will also be, posted on the website and in the CT Source Q&A, any cost incurred prior to a notice to proceed is not eligible for reimbursement.
Okay, thank you, Diane. In case anyone had trouble hearing Diane, we got a question about costs incurred prior to the notice to proceed. Any costs that you incur prior to receiving our notice to proceed from us are not eligible for reimbursement.
We have another question in the Q&A. I'll read that aloud. Will a list of companies who successfully submitted LOI and are approved to provide proposal for phase 1 be provided?
I can answer that. This is Emily Pish from Connecticut DOT. We will also be providing this answer to this question in writing. We have a FOIA portal here at Connecticut DOT, or a Freedom of Information Act portal, where we will be posting the list. This is an area of the portal that people can go to find frequently requested documents posted there, and we will post that document to there and let you know how to access that. But we did just get guidance from our attorneys on that.
Thanks, Emily. There's another question. Hi, where do you submit the LOI for phase 2?
Good question. For phase 2 of this program, we will be opening that a little bit later than this one. We don't have the specific time, but the process will likely be very much the same, going through CT Source to submit your response to that solicitation there. We will be providing updates along the way and posting things via both CT Source and public notice process through newspaper and other outlets as press releases to notify the public of when those bids will become available. Phase 2 requires that we complete phase 1 according to the Federal Highway Association Administration, so that we can ensure that our alternative fuel corridors are fully built out and certified by them. So we'll have to stagger those rounds a bit just to ensure that we're meeting the federal requirements prior to lining up phase 2. But we do expect to have additional solicitations coming even as a part of phase 1 if there are areas that we do not have enough applications or a successful application. So we will be updating you along the way with that information.
Okay, last call for any questions. Okay. Well, if you have any other...
Oh, one
yep,
additional question
okay.
came in. It says, thank you. Having DOT pre-quals, does this help with your decision process?
I'll unmute myself there. Apologies. So that would be something that you should mention in your area where you discuss your team qualifications and your ability to deliver on a project such as this. But that is otherwise not something we specifically check off for, but certainly would assist you in demonstrating your qualifications to manage a project such as this.
Thanks, Emily. Okay, just to wrap up, if anyone else has any other questions, please submit them to our NEVI email inbox, ct-dotevplanning@ct.gov by February 23rd. Thank you again for your interest in the NEVI program, and we look forward to hearing from you. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.